All right, so now you guys have watched the Milgram experiment, or excuse me, the Ash experiment. So I want to ask you this question. With the Ash conformity experiment, uh, what do you think are the situations in which we are more likely to conform? All right, so think about what you saw in the Ash experiment, and what do you think made it so that in that experiment you're more likely to conform? Ash repeated the experiment several times and changed many of the variables to see when conformity would happen the most. So just think on this for a second. So you can pause this video here and just talk about it and then come back and we'll discuss. All right, so I'm going to give you four reasons for why we might be more likely to, or why Ash says that we're more likely to conform. Um, we're more likely to conform if everyone else in the group is saying a different answer than we are. So, in fact, if even just one person is willing to dissent, we will become more willing to dissent. We're more likely to conform if the group is large. When Ash had groups of three or less, people were willing to dissent. But more than three, it became less likely that folks would dissent. You're more likely to conform if you feel insecure. And you're more likely because I mean, you have to think about it, right? It would be quite unreasonable for you to think that everybody else in the group is a Confederate and is lying and is, saying the wrong answer. You're going to doubt yourself, right? So if you already feel insecure, you're going to doubt yourself more. Finally, you're more likely to conform if you admire the people in the group. So if you trust them, you believe them, you think that they are trustworthy sources. Um, so here we have two ways in which we can understand conformity and why we conform. There's normative social, and this is not just for the Ash experiment, for other things as well. So there's normative social influence and informational social influence. Normative social influence is the kind of peer pressure example, right? When you conform with a desire to gain approval. Now remember, conformity isn't always conforming and doing bad things. It might be, normative social influence might be why you like similar music as your friends, or you wear similar clothes, things like that. Informational social influence is when you're willing to accept others' opinions on reality. So you're willing to accept the information that they give you, right? You know you're driving the wrong way on the freeway because everybody else is driving in the opposite direction, right? So this is a way you're going to conform with the rest around you because you're like, okay, they know something, and I know something too now because of what they're doing. In a way, the Ash experiment is informational social influence, right? You think like, well, maybe they know something I don't know. Everybody else is saying this other thing. Maybe I'm not seeing something right. All right, so let's move forward. Okay, oops, sorry. There. Now, the last thing we're going to take a look at today is going to be Milgram's very, very famous. Now, this in terms of psychology experiments, social psych experiments, this is up there with Stanford Prison, the Stanford Prison experiment for famous experiments. And what we're going to see in the video that you're going to watch, I just want to set it up for you, so then you're going to watch the video, is this, that in Milgram's experiments, what he does is, Milgram's at Yale, so I'll just let you know that. What he does is he has folks come in and they're going to be taking part in what they think is going to be a kind of a word recall, word association, sort of memory experiment. Okay, so let's say you were taking part in Milgram's experiment. You'd go in and they'd be like, okay, thank you for taking part. You're going to play, you're going to be the teacher in this experiment, and this gentleman over here is going to be the learner. And you would shake hands with the learner, and they would say, okay, now let's go ahead and get started. And then the learner would go off into sort of across a partition from you, so you wouldn't be able to see them, but you could hear them, right? And you'd sit down at a board, and you would begin to ask them questions about this in this word association test. And they would push a button in the other room that they were in to signal what they thought the answer was. And if they say the incorrect answer, as you can imagine from this meme over here, what you were to do is you would shock them. Okay? Now, the shocks you would as and with each successive wrong answer, the shocks would get stronger. So you would be responsible for keep on like just going up in the voltage. The ending voltage, the voltage went up to 450 volts, which is, very high, probably enough to kill a person, maybe even enough to kill like a rhinoceros. Um, and it would say on the board that you were pushing the buttons on, it would start saying mild shock, medium shock, high danger, and then the last one would just say XXX. Um, right? So this is what you would do. And in the room with you as the teacher, there would also be a researcher, wearing a white lab coat and giving you instructions. So what I want you to do now is, so let's see. I want you to go ahead and click on the video that is about the Milgram uh, obedience experiment, okay? Now you're just going to watch the little clip of the one gentleman that you see at the beginning. So it's just going to go for about a minute and a half. So watch him, and then I want you to skip the video ahead to the 26-minute mark, okay? You got that? So first watch it right where it starts and just watch the one research participant and how he interacts and what he says and what he does. And then skip to 26 minutes and then watch from 26 minutes to 30 minutes because this is a much longer, it's a full 45-minute documentary. I don't want you to watch the whole thing. I just want you to watch those two parts. So just the part that is linked to immediately and then skip ahead to 26 and watch from 26 to 30. All right. And when you're done with that, come back here and we'll finish up all of our social psych stuff for today. All right. So just take a moment, and you're back now. You've watched the video, and what I want you to do is just think for a moment after now that you've watched the video. What do you think the percentages were here? All right. How many people in Milgram's experiment do you think went all the way to 450 volts? And just know that the second gentleman that you watched, he did go all the way to 450 volts. So how many people do you think were like the first guy? And how many people do you think were like the second guy? And what percentage do you think? And you can just say that out loud. Okay, I'm assuming you just said that out loud. All right, so Milgram, before he did the experiment, he did a poll at Yale and in the psychology department, asking all the other professors and asking students, what did they think the breakdown was going to be? And they said, probably maybe like 1% of the folks are going to go all the way up to 450. As you can see here, about 65% of the research participants went all the way to 450 volts. Right? And not only that, if you were going to be like the first gentleman and you were going to resist and refuse to participate, you would have done it right at the beginning. You can see it kind of plateaus over here. So this is where the drop off is. So if you were going to resist, you would do it at the beginning. Now, Milgram begins this experiment 3 months after the trial of Adolf Eichmann begins. If you remember from when we were doing developmental psychology and the development of morals and ethics, we talked about Adolf Eichmann and we talked about Hannah Arendt and Hannah Arendt's writing on Eichmann about the banality of evil. If you remember what Eichmann's defense was, right? It was that I was just doing my job, right? Now, so this is the thing that you have to understand. It is why so many of these social psych experiments got done at the time that they got done. It was that it was after World War II, right? It was after these unbelievable atrocities occurred in both the European and in the Pacific theater, in which ordinary people participated in inflicting horror upon, their fellow humans. And how do we understand this? So that's what the Milgram experiment is trying to do, right? Like, how is it that these totally normal people, nice people, would be willing to give shocks that they thought might actually be killing the person? And keep in mind, these weren't sadists, right? Remember that second gentleman in the video? He was, at one point, he appears to be crying, right? He is very, very upset about what he is doing. He doesn't want to be doing it, and yet he doesn't resist, right? So a couple of things. First of all, the Milgram experiment has been replicated in 2009. They had to modify it somewhat because, as you can imagine, there is no way the Milgram experiment would ever pass ethical IRB review now. So they had to modify it. And they kind of, like they said, the voltage didn't go up as high, so nobody would ever think they were actually killing someone. And similar results. About 60% of the people who participated in the 2009 version of the experiment went to the maximum voltage. A French TV show did kind of like a reality show version of the Milgram experiment, where they even added in a studio audience which would cheer when you shocked people. And on that version, 66 out of 80 participants gave the maximum voltage, right? Okay. Now, oh, I don't, you know what? I did realize I don't think I said this out loud before I set up the Milgram experiment. Just so if anybody is worried, if you haven't figured this out yet, nobody was actually being shocked. Okay, that didn't actually happen. So just FYI, if I think you probably figured that out, but just so I'm saying it out loud. All right, finally, the last couple of things. Think to yourself, when are you more likely to uh, be obedient, right? When are you more likely to obey? What are the things that you think made it so in the Milgram experiment people were more likely to obey? If you want to pause this video for a moment, just talk amongst yourself for like a minute and then come back, go ahead and do that. Okay, so when are you more likely to obey? Well, if those of you who said, well, the fact that there was the researcher in the room telling you to go on, the authority figure, yes, absolutely. The presence of the authority figure absolutely makes you more likely to obey. The second thing would be that the person that you are shocking, you can't see them, right? They are physically removed from you. So you can't actually see what's happening to them. So again, more likely to obey in that situation. Because it's Yale, right? It's a prestigious institution. You're not going to think that they're going to make you do something unethical. So you're more likely to obey. And then finally, when we have no models of somebody defying authority, we are more likely to obey. So if we saw someone else refuse, say, no, I won't do it, I'm not going to hurt this person, and walk away, we would be more likely to walk away as well. All right, so thus endeth the lesson. You've got an FRQ that you're going to do now. Ms. Ratz is going to collect it at the end of class. It's okay if you don't finish it all. It's okay if you can totally work in groups. I'm not going to be grading it for accuracy. I just want to see that you've done a little work on it. Okay. So good luck. Hope that's good. And I hope that you all have a really, really nice weekend. Don't forget to fill out the course evals. All right. That's it.